Hello and welcome to Teletalk. I'm Liv.
And I'm Ben.
And on tonight's episode, you'll hear our carefully considered and not at all random thoughts on a show we like.
We're giving ourselves an age rating of 15 and above, but you're welcome to make up your own mind. Listener discretion is advised.
So we're still fairly new to podcasting. This is our second ever episode. So we would really appreciate it if you could rate and review us.
Absolutely. And you can also get in contact with us either through our socials. We're at TeletalkPod at Blue Sky and also as a Facebook page. And we've got our email address of teletalkpod@outlook.com. Please do reach out. And just a note, we have a puppy, and so there might be a little bit of noise in the background from him, so bear with us if there is.
Yeah, we didn't realise until editing the previous episode, but he was making a lot of noise in the background.
He's a rascal, but he's our rascal.
Absolutely. Right, so tonight we are recapping Gavin and Stacey Season 1, Episode 2.
And the description for that episode is, after a huge misunderstanding on the phone, Stacey thinks Gavin has finished with her. He drives to Wales to explain and ends up taking her home with him. Having never been further than Bridgend before, Stacey's trip to Essex is an eye-opening experience that ends with the biggest surprise of all.
This is a really long episode description, considering the show itself is sort of half-hour episodes.
Yeah, it flies by as well, this one.
It does, but I feel like they squeeze a lot in.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So we cut first to see Stacey and Gavin on the phone to each other again, the same as how we began the last episode.
Oh good, more of this.
Yeah, but they can't get through. You know, they're both picking up the phone, dialing, you get the engaged tone, nothing's happening.
And then, finally, Stacey tries to call and Gavin picks up at the same moment and they're very confused and then they're all so in sync.
Yeah, and he says, it didn't even ring.
Oh, it's insufferable.
I thought it was quite cute. I liked it.
Of course, fair enough.
So the problem with this phone call is that Gavin's boss quickly comes to stand behind him, sort of hovers over his shoulder, trying to direct the phone call.
Yeah, well, he asks who he's on the phone to, and he says it's the company that Stacey works for. And the boss asks him to sort of chase up an invoice.
Yeah.
And Gavin says, yep, will do. And then the boss doesn't move.
Yeah, he wants him to go away and he just doesn't.
Yeah, so that is quite funny.
Yeah. So Gavin just hangs up the phone. Like, he says, I don't know, what does he say? I can't remember.
Oh no, they've gone.
Yeah. And then the boss is like, well, that's really rude.
I'm sure this will have no repercussions for Gavin at all.
So the boss makes him phone back. And Stacey answers the phone and goes, did you hang up on me? And he's like, no.
Poor old Gavin is trying to have two conversations at once and neither of them's going well.
Yeah, I thought it was actually very good. You can see the confusion happening.
Yeah. And from what the limited information that we have about Stacey is, we know that this isn't going well because you can hear her side of the conversation and she's getting more and more agitated. What I did think was funny was before he gets Gavin to call back, the boss has some choice things to say about Stacey.
Oh, he does, yeah.
Oh my god, she can talk.
Yeah.
And Gavin's just like, yeah.
Yeah, and he says that sort of Gavin's predecessor used to be on the phone with her for hours, couldn't shake her off, and she was flirting and giggling. He was married, but he wanted to go and meet up with her.
Oh, Gavin, you're not special.
Yeah, Gavin just sort of stares straight ahead, almost expressionless, as in like, really?
And Liv, that's what we would call red flag number one.
Well, yeah.
I mean, probably not number one. I think there's probably been others.
The odd one or two.
Or 3 or 4.
But ultimately, it works out all right. We know.
Well, yes, so judge them by the results, not by their methods.
Yeah. Anyway, so Gavin phones her back, and it really doesn't go well. And you mentioned already the two conversations in one, but what ultimately happens, accidentally, is that Stacey asks Gavin if he thinks she's a slag, and he says yes.
But to his boss.
He's saying, yeah.
She thinks it's to him. Oh!
Yeah. So at this point, I think she hangs up on him then, And he tries to phone her back and she's gone.
I just feel like this is so eminently avoidable.
Absolutely. I mean, Stacey jumped to like a million conclusions, not confusions.
I mean, it's still true.
It was confusing, but that's not what she jumped to.
No, she cleared quite a tall conclusion from a standing start.
Yeah, so Stacey feels like Gavin has dumped her and she gets very upset.
And she won't answer any of his calls and she storms off. Because
Yeah.
we see her phone ringing and her desk is empty.
Yeah, and then we see her storming across Barry.
I mean, that is a grade A strop walk.
Yes, it is, yeah.
But I feel like this is a fine example of why a lot of people really don't like Stacey.
Yeah, possibly.
She's very dramatic. But again, I could see Pam or Smithy doing this.
I was thinking Smithy.
Like, can you imagine, like, Pam's stride? She'd be a little bit more worried, whereas Smithy, absolutely, he would power walk.
He would be furious.
Oh, yes.
And then we see Nessa at the arcade, and she is conning a man off of a winning machine. It's about to win.
Yeah, she's been keeping an eye on him for ages, and
Yes.
she knows the machine so well.
Yeah.
And again, it's one of those things where you go, on face value, that is an awful thing to do to someone.
Yes.
But because it's Nessa,
Yeah.
you kind of just go, alright, yeah, cool.
We sort of expect it from her already.
Yeah, and she also, like, sees him off by calling him a pervert,
Yeah, yeah.
because obviously...
And he scarpers.
Oh, he does. I mean, I would.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
So then Stacey arrives and says that Gavin's breaking up with me. And she says, you need to go to the kiosk. I'll be there in a minute.
That kiosk is such a key place in
Yeah.
Gavin and Stacey, and you wouldn't have thought, would
I
you?
know, yeah. It's quite a mundane place. And it's quite public, actually, with the glass window.
Well, yeah, yeah.
But they have quite private conversations in there.
Well, they do, now that you mention it, yeah. It's like a confessional.
Yeah.
The Gavin and Stacey confessional.
Yeah, and later on it's almost used as a recording studio as well, because we see them rehearsing various songs in there.
Maybe we need a kiosk.
We do not need a kiosk.
If you're imagining us now, we're in a kiosk.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, after that, we cut to Gavin and Smithy in the pub. It's sort of like the other end of this pseudo breakup, the debrief. So we've seen the girls, now we've got the boys, and they deal with it slightly differently.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think this is one of the most supportive times that we see Smithy.
And most of the time he's not saying anything.
Yeah, to be fair, he is fairly quiet.
Which is where you get the best of Smithy.
Yeah. So Smithy's at the bar getting a round in, and we hear Gavin leaving a voicemail for Stacey, and he is begging her to let him explain what happened.
Yeah, it's really interesting because they have that really long silence afterwards where they're just looking. But that's like a classic Gavin and Stacey thing of leave that silence there and just leave it just that little bit longer than you'd expect from a telly show.
And then Smithy asks if he's tried her mobile.
I love the idea that in that time you would think that he was leaving a voicemail on a landline. That's so of its time.
Well, he does say, what do you think I've been doing?
I know, but like even just the idea that there would be a voicemail on a home phone, or someone has a home phone.
Yeah, if someone even has one in the first place.
Also classic flip phones.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that is a throwback, isn't it?
Yeah. Just, you know how Smithy then suggests, have you tried using a withheld number? I've used it loads of times and it always works. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Have you ever done a withheld number dial?
Not intentionally.
How does one accidentally do it?
Well, at work, when you have a
Oh,
withheld-
I see. No, I meant like literally doing it.
No.
Oh, have you not? Okay.
Have you?
Yeah.
Who have you phoned?
Oh, well, when I was younger, me and a couple of friends went through a short phase of doing some prank calls.
Right.
We'd just take our numbers and change the last digit of our numbers
Right.
and then just randomly ring people and prank call them.
Okay, you've never told me this.
No, I haven't. Because
buried
it's
deep in your
embarrassing.
memory.
Yeah, it's not one of my proudest moments.
Go on, tell me what happened.
I think it was like there was a couple of prank shows that were popular at the time. I can't even really remember. One of my friends sort of shouted some things at a woman. She got quite upset.
Oh.
I know. Again, not proud of it. So it would have been really helpful if you'd have had an embarrassing story to tell. But
Well, I have. You've reminded me of something similar. I mean,
Excellent.
It wasn't me directly, but I was
Uh-huh.
with a group of friends at school. We did a similar thing. We didn't withhold our number, but
oh, that's a rookie mistake, and you hate to see it.
no, you don't. No, hang on. One of us was eating a snack, and I can't remember what. And someone said, "Wouldn't it be funny if we phoned up to complain about this snack?" So there was the free phone number on the back of the packet.
Hello, Ginsters.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, we were at school, so... Sorry, I thought you meant Guinness then.
No.
That's where my mind went.
I mean, we went to the same school, but crikey. We were at school, we cracked open a stout, and then we rang to complain.
It does sound like the sort of thing a drunk person might do.
I mean, yes, but you were at school.
I know. Anyway, so we, it wasn't me, a friend rang up the number and put in a complaint, and clearly the woman on the other end knew what was happening and asked to speak to an adult. And so we put another one of our friends on to pretend to be the mum.
Did they put on a deep voice?
No, they put on a very posh voice like this. The woman still knew and they hung up on us.
Oh wow, okay, so yeah, you did make me feel better by telling me about the time you were drinking stout at school.
That is not the takeaway.
No, that's my takeaway. So yeah, speaking of stout, they were at the pub, and the next thing was that Gavin asked Smithy to call Nessa.
Oh yeah,
the classic can't get to her, go through her friend maneuver.
Yeah, and so Gavin says, yeah, well, please phone Nessa, and Smithy's like, no. And they do this, please no, please no, please no, for a bit.
Yeah, because, you know, Smithy's being all pissy about it.
And to my surprise, he actually does phone her.
Well, the thing is about Smithy is he might be a bit of a prat, but he does always come through in the end. He will bitch and moan about it, but he will show up in the end.
Yeah, you're right, actually. That is something consistent about him.
Let it be known that on this day, Liv admitted I was right.
Yeah. So he phones her and she answers, and it sounds quite friendly, like they're having a bit of back and forth, and he's saying...
It's because she doesn't know who he is.
Yeah. It's Smithy from the weekend, Gav's mate, in the hotel, in the ensuite. And then he says really quietly, the toilet brush.
What really makes that hilarious is Gavin's face.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Did you not know? He sort of like looks like moderately horrified. Like, why are you saying this here? Like, it's sort of like half eye rolling, half cringe.
Oh,
it was a brilliant reaction. It makes it, and it's a real shame you missed it.
Yeah, well, because then Nessa's like, oh, hiya. I mean, again, we can't hear her side of the conversation, but we see Smithy's change. Like, oh, good, finally she knows who I am.
The implication is that she couldn't narrow it down until they got as far as the toilet brush.
Yeah.
Like, there could have been multiple people up until that point.
That weekend was very busy.
I mean, I wasn't necessarily suggesting it was all in one weekend, but...
Well, I mean, he narrowed it down to begin with, last weekend.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, she did go out for a curry with Dave.
True, very true.
Who knows what happened. But the call then ends abruptly when Smithy actually says why he's calling.
Yeah.
And, just flips the phone closed and goes, she don't want to talk to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Gavin decides he has to go to Barry.
Yeah, and this is already a bit samey because he's already been to Barry. And actually, Smithy points that out.
Yeah, and Gavin says he's going to use a flex day.
A flex day from work, yeah.
Yeah, what's a flex day?
Well, some companies would give you the odd flexi day where you could just not work that day and make it up another time.
Oh, so it's like modern day flexible working, but the early 2000s equivalent where you just made it back.
Yeah, so like once a month you could just, I'm not coming in today and I'll work a Saturday in 2 weeks' time instead, kind of thing.
Okay. I never had that.
Well, no, we weren't quite in the working place then, I think.
Well, yeah, that's really ageist, shall we? I mean, I think I was.
Yeah, you probably were.
Okay, good. Let's move on. So we cut to Gavin driving his blue Saxo, and I presume he's driving like a twat as usual, but he's driving on the motorway, so it's sort of hard to tell, but let's just assume. Honestly, I'm surprised. If he was doing it now, if they were doing this show now, he'd drive a BMW.
Or an Audi.
Or a Lexus.
Oh my goodness. So we then cut to Gwen's house. Nessa's eating an omelette.
Of course.
And Gwen is comforting Stacey at the dining table.
Because Stacey always needs comforting for something.
Yeah, and then we hear one of Nessa's stories. And I don't know if we heard one in the last episode.
She did go off on a few things last time, but I don't think they were quite as classic as this one.
Yeah.
She did more of the, like, answering honestly about how she felt last time, whereas this time it's a tangent, implying a varied and mysterious backstory.
Yes, yeah, when she was working in Harrods.
And this is awkward in light of recent allegations against Mohammed Al-Fayed, the head of Harrods, who she's flying. He did all this with. It's just funny how things come full circle and become awkward and weird.
Yes. So, I mean, we can skip past it, straight to the doorbell. And Nessa says, oh, I'll get it. And she gets up and she goes to answer the door. And who stood at the door?
Gavin!
Gavala?
Yes, and of course Nessa knows who Gavin is.
Yes. And she starts to have a bit of a go at him. And then Gwen comes up behind, assuming that Gavin is a door-to-door salesman.
Honestly, knowing Nessa, this might have saved Gavin's life.
Yeah, and Nessa just looks quite amused, doesn't she, at all this confusion?
She knows what's going down because she knows what Gwen and everyone else is like.
Yeah.
Gavin is about to be swarmed.
Yeah. So he says he's not a salesman. So then she assumes he's a Jehovah's Witness.
Well, technically, before that,
Yeah.
Gwen says quite aggressively for her to Gavin, don't you be trying to go on at Nessa because she's easy prey.
Oh, yeah.
She's all done with that cult stuff and the drug things. And
Yeah.
again, hinting at some crazy backstory. But just that weird thing of going, oh, now Nessa is easy prey.
Yeah.
When up until now she's been a terrifying force of nature.
And also, it actually validates her backstory.
Yeah, I suppose it does.
Yeah, so we've got now two characters talking about Nessa's ridiculous stories.
Well, yes, because in the first episode, she got upset when she thought Stacey had told Gavin and Smithy about her doing drugs in the past.
Yeah, because he said about powdering her nose.
Yes, and she didn't understand what that meant.
Cheers, Stace.
Yeah, just like that.
So then Uncle Bryn comes over. I'll be there now in a minute.
Bryn wading in.
Yeah.
And as soon as he hears that he's a Jehovah's,
Yeah.
he comes out with the best thing. Oh, well, let's grab a coffee and celebrate Christmas. Funny, but deeply insensitive.
Yes, and then he tells Gavin that there's no point doing the next 8 houses on this side of the road because they're all Catholics.
But what I love is it's this sort of thing where he starts off going, there's no point in bothering, but then he sort of like transitions into helping him by listing off the street and then going, well, there's the family at the end.
They're new, we don't know them. You
Yes,
could try them. Yeah, so then Gavin just sort of comes out with it and he addresses Gwen and says, look, I'm Gavin and I'm in love with your daughter. At which point Stacey comes forward. She's clearly overheard the conversation and she is so pleased to see him. And then we get Bryn.
Punchline King Bryn. She never said he was a Jehovah's. Ba-dum-tsh.
What a way to end the scene.
Cut.
Yeah, it's very good. Very, very good.
So we cut to Gavin and Stacey sitting in front of the arcade looking out to sea, and he's just finishing giving her the rundown of actually what happened at the beginning of the episode, rendering it all pointless.
Well, what I think is quite nice is Stacey then did hear him out and they, she does accept that she was wrong.
Yeah, and she was vulnerable by saying, like, she thought he was breaking up with her because that's what normally happens.
Yeah.
Which is sort of... It's both foreshadowing and hinting at backstory.
Right, what are you chatting about foreshadowing for?
Well, we find out later about the recurring... Like, she's been engaged a bunch of times.
Yeah, but here she's talking about people breaking up with her.
Well, I'm presuming some of the numerous engagements broke up with her.
Well, Bryn goes off on one, doesn't he? You didn't like him, and so you didn't have him.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I can't remember all of them. But yeah, it just felt like it was hinting. There's been a couple of hints.
Gavin then says that he'll have to leave soon, and Stacey gets upset. She doesn't want him to leave. And she sort of dreamily says that he should move to Barry.
It's well lush.
Yeah,
I don't know why, but I really don't like it's lush or like lush.
It got overused around this time, I think.
It just to me, it feels like moist. You know how most people don't like the word moist? Yeah, I can see you grimacing. Lush is like that to me. There's just something.
Well, they
there.
say it a lot in this show.
Stacey specifically says it a lot.
And Nessa.
Yeah.
Yeah, the two of them. So instead of sort of dreaming, Gavin says, well, why don't you come back with me now?
And we'll both pull sickies.
Yeah.
Such of their age.
Yeah.
Did you pull sickies to be hanging out with a boy?
I've never pulled a sickie.
Have you never pulled a sickie?
No.
Oh, you haven't lived. It was a long time ago. I haven't done it for ages, but
Right.
I did when I was younger.
So yeah, Stacey agrees to go back to Gavin's house and just show up in the middle of the night and tell Pam and Mick that she's staying.
Ask permission? Nah.
Well, she says it's the most outrageous thing she's ever done. Something like that.
I don't believe that.
Well, no, because we hear later on, don't we? We hear all sorts of stories.
She is thoroughly unself-aware.
And then she says, I can't wait to tell Nessa. And then we get almost a hard cut to
Boom.
Nessa. asking if she's ever coming back. And then we get another story.
Oh, God, yeah.
Her first best friend never came back.
Nessa's first best friend.
Yeah. She went to Scotland with a guy, never saw her again. That was back in 82. For all I know, she could have been trafficked. I doubt it, mind. She's bigger than me. That's what Nessa says.
I've just got written classic Nessa tangent.
Yeah. Do you know what? It is a tangent, isn't it?
Yeah, the classic Nessa tangent, the classic Smithy tantrum,
Yeah.
the classic Stacey meltdown.
The classic Pam
Meltdown. Panic.
You said, spiral.
Spiral,
Yeah.
yes. You got a Pam spiral, a Smithy tantrum, a Nessa tangent,
Yeah.
and a Stacey meltdown.
Yeah.
And a Gavin bafflement.
Yeah. Gwen fusses around Stacey.
I love that she makes them omelettes to go,
Yeah.
all wrapped up, and gives her £10 for Gavin for the petrol.
Well, that wouldn't even cover it, would it?
But
Not these days.
But it is such a mum parenty type thing to do, isn't
Yeah.
it? Like that idea of give them some money for the petrol.
Yeah.
Like it just feels so real.
Yeah.
I can't put my finger on it. It's just one of those little mundane things.
Yeah, you are right, and they like that, don't they? They like making it real.
But it is little things like that you don't necessarily... Like, if you're watching it, you might not even think about it. I've only really noticed it because I was paying attention. But they're the little points that subconsciously make it feel authentic.
Yeah, because they make you go, oh, my mum does that,
Yeah.
or my dad does that. It makes it feel... You're right, authentic.
Yeah. Speaking of authentic,
Well, hang on. Gwen
Sorry.
just says, where's Gavin?
Oh, and boy, are we about to find out.
Yeah.
This whole section was so relatable for me.
It is very, very good.
I have been in almost this identical situation so many times in my life.
Yeah.
And if it's not literally this, it's almost the same, like with different subjects. It's brilliantly real.
Yeah, so Bryn is showing Gavin his route planner on the PC.
And insisting that he shares his chair. Just pop a cheek on there.
Yeah, Gavin's like, no, I'll get my own.
And Bryn insists.
Bryn does insist. Yes.
It's just that extra layer of uncomfortableness that they just add, but still feels relatable.
Yeah. And Gavin does try and say that it's not necessary. He's driven here twice already. He does not need a route planner.
And Bryn doesn't listen. And that is so real as well, because it's reflective. Like, if you've ever been in this sort of situation, it doesn't matter how tactfully you try and go, it's fine. You're trying to say, I already know this,
Yeah.
please stop,
Yeah.
without saying it, and you can't escape, because that person is just going to go on, because they're being so kind and helpful,
Yeah.
and you just have that moment of realisation that you're in this for the duration, and there's no escape.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I mean, this whole thing is, again, of its time. Because
Yes.
these days, everyone's just got it on their phone.
Have you ever printed out a route planner and gone?
Yeah, but not recently.
I had to print a route planner when I was at university to get home, because even though I'd driven it before, I couldn't remember how to get
Yeah,
back.
I know.
I got so lost.
Yeah, I can believe that.
I missed a turning, and it's so of its time.
I mean, Ben still doesn't know how to get to his dad's house.
I'm 50% of the time I know how to get to my dad's house. There's a turning where you can go two different ways, and they're sort of like the two main routes to the main groups of places that we go, and I can never remember, so I usually have to these days I just sort of glance my eye at you, and you go, that way. And then I can be like, yeah, I knew that.
Well, Bryn explains that the trick with computers and the internet is remembering that everything starts with a www dot. And ironically, it doesn't anymore.
The old dub.
Yeah. And he goes, it can be tricky to remember. I like to think of a helpful thing like whiskey with water.
Pop quiz, do you know what that's called?
Yeah, I do, but I don't remember.
It's a mnemonic.
Yeah.
Well, that went down well.
So Bryn tells Gavin all about the mnemonics that he uses.
Whiskey with water. And we get another classic allude to his dear dead departed brother, because that was his favourite drink.
His favourite drink. And then he tries to come up, you could make it whatever you want, such as women wearing wings. And you could just see Gavin's face. It's completely expressionless. And he suggests, what about World Wide Web? And Bryn thinks that is brilliant.
It's a genius idea by Gavin. He's got it so right. It's perfect.
Yeah.
But again, it's that sort of thing. And the brilliant punchline of, what is it you do for work?
Yeah.
I work with computers.
Yeah.
And it was at that moment I felt it in my very soul.
Yeah, and Bryn is like, oh, right. Like, he's just realised the penny's dropped for him as well.
And then bam, cut.
Yeah.
It's just so perfect.
Yeah, and they're driving off, and then sort of Stacey's family are waving them away, and they seem to be quite approving of Gavin.
Well, I mean, he's better than Stacey, so you know. He is long-suffering and she is a nightmare. That's my hot take.
Well, Bryn here refers to Gavin as a cracking-looking lad.
Yes, there is a sort of through line throughout the series of Bryn being weirdly homoerotic.
Yes, but we never do find out his sexuality.
I don't think he knows his sexuality.
Yeah.
He's Bryn-sexual.
Yes, okay, we'll go with that.
Because there was, for a period of time, I think there was the sort of theory that he and Gwen would get together, because they had a sort of weird codependent thing.
I don't think they ever implied they would get together.
I think it was like fan theory.
The fans were wrong.
Yes, I know the fans were wrong. We've seen the show.
No, I don't. No, I think you've made that up.
Okay, well, you just really don't want it to be a thing.
No.
We then have another cut.
Yep.
And we see a classic Pam spiral.
Yeah, we do.
Boom, straight in. She's panicked because Stacey arrived in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And to be fair, that's quite the imposition.
Yeah, and her pants were on the radiator.
Which is that's a statement.
And she says, "Thank God they were new."
Oh, Pam's were on. Sorry, my brain thought you meant Stacey's were on. So she'd come in and just gone pants on the radiator, which is a statement.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
But it's true though, isn't it? Like, if you're not expecting guests or anything, you're probably going to be a bit more relaxed. So like, this is where you kind of see like Gavin does take liberties at home.
Yeah, but then also Pam says, you know, the house was a state, and then she lists everything that was wrong, and you think, oh God, our house would be in quite a good condition if that's all that was out of place.
Yes, but this is the woman who is making her husband not have toast because of crumbs and eating his cereal over the sink.
Yeah, if he must have something to eat, he's got to eat it over the sink.
And she explains the difference between hushed tones and whispering.
Yeah.
And she just gets on this, like, really good melodic ramble.
Yeah, and
when she's in a spiral.
You said about hushed tones, I really like the way she said, these are hushed tones. Like, it is very dramatic.
And of course, as soon as Gavin, her lovely prince,
Yeah.
enters, she immediately offers him toast, much to Mick's chagrin.
Yeah, because she's been making this big fancy breakfast for everyone.
And it just illustrates he's such a mummy's boy.
Yeah.
I'm surprised he wasn't chugging milk out of the carton as he walked in.
What I liked about this scene was that the three of them, the Shipmans, were all sort of making fun of each other. They're making fun of Pam. And ultimately, instead of stropping or getting genuinely upset, she joins in and she's laughing with them.
And again, the irony in some ways that it's now Mick complaining that Pam is starving him.
Yes.
After last episode.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show it all goes back and around, and they do have a laugh, and it's you can see where Mick can bring her out of her spirals.
Absolutely, yeah, because Mick is always quite grounded, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he can just talk around, I suppose.
And from that lovely bit, we go to Stacey being Stacey, and so
well, she's just
weird.
waking up, and I think the implication is that the laughter from downstairs sort of rouses her, and she wakes up and she looks in the mirror and she is mortified. She's got a massive spot at the top of her nose, just near her eye.
See, being male, I didn't really get what the big deal was here.
What?
Like, so she's got a spot. What's the problem?
Well, that does seem to be Gavin's attitude, to be fair, when he finds out. But she comes down to breakfast wearing massive sunglasses.
Well, I mean, we do need an excuse for Pam Spiral 2.0.
Yeah. So Stacey comes in, and everyone just looks at her, and she introduces herself, but they just stare at her in silence.
It is easy to forget that this is kind of like their first meeting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's like we see them having their breakfast, and it's so tangibly awkward.
They're all sort of looking at each other, going, what's up with the glasses?
And there's like those tiny little awkward, like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
And we've all had meals or meetings like that, and it sort of makes your very soul crinkle up a bit, doesn't it?
And even Gavin's confused by the glasses. So, like, he's trying to make eye contact with Stacey and sort of, he's trying to gesture, like, what's up with the glasses? And she's not getting it. So he gives her a little kick under the table. And Pam, that is the beginning of Spiral 2.0.
Yeah. She takes 1 and 1 and makes 45. So Mick decides that he's going to go to work.
Yeah, he's out of there.
And Pam's like, Michael, can I just have a word?
That's a really good impression.
And she goes, you know what this means, don't you? And Mick's like, no.
He's baffled, isn't he?
You're completely baffled. I think Mick being baffled by Pam is sort of the theme of their marriage.
Yeah.
And she goes, the only thing that could possibly be true is our darling little boy is beating her.
Yeah.
Like, beating her with an inch of her life.
Yeah.
And Mick's like, what? And she goes, it happens, Michael. I've heard about it.
And he says, where?
Well, on Hollyoaks.
Yeah.
And he goes, right, I'm off. Long-suffering Mick. And she insists. And you can see, and this is so well acted, because there's a moment where he just goes, right, we're going to have to deal with this.
Yeah.
And so he closes the door and goes, Gavin, could you come out here for a moment?
Yeah, and so Gavin comes out and they ask him what's up with the glasses, and he tells them that he doesn't know either.
And yeah, it's just brilliant. Like, does Mick say to Gavin, your mother thinks that you're beating her?
I don't remember.
Oh dear, we've done well here.
And he says, right, Stacey, can you come out here a minute? So now they're all in the hallway.
And just, again, she stood there and they're all arranged Gavin's going, look, to be honest, we're a bit unsure about the eyewear situation.
Yeah, and she goes instantly to, please don't make me take them off.
And you can tell Pam is like, oh my God.
Yeah, she steps forward, doesn't she? Pam goes, do you want to show me?
Without the boys.
Yeah. And so Stacey agrees. And they stay in the hallway. They just sort of turn their backs to Mick and Gavin. And Pam lifts the glasses and you see that moment where Pam realises exactly what's going on and what all the fuss is about. And she says, right, Mick, you go to work. Gavin, you go tidy the kitchen. Stacey and I are just going to spend a little bit of time in the bathroom.
Again, as a man, that sounds really strange.
Does it?
Yeah, we're just going to the bathroom together for a bit.
That happens all the time.
And I know it ends with a funny little punchline of we hear Pam saying, this won't hurt a bit.
Yeah.
And then a moment later, Stacey going, ow!
Yeah.
Which is funny, but it's also quite a heartfelt, sweet moment.
Yeah.
Because Pam's sort of taking her under her wing, being motherly to her.
Yeah.
Amidst all of the madness and crazy and, assuming her son's beating her and things like that.
I think she's just really relieved, isn't she?
I just think it's really interesting as well that Pam, she puts Gavin in this, like, My Little Prince role, but she's very quick to go, well, he must be beating his girlfriend.
Yeah.
So interesting.
It's quite nice, actually, to know that she would be on the side of the victim, not necessarily her son, just because.
So we move on to the pub.
Oh God, the quiz night.
The quiz night. And we get a classic intro view of Smithy's car in all its glory pulling in. And then he gets out and they meet and they do what becomes a familiar refrain of the robot dance. Yeah. Do you know the context of the robot dance?
There's context?
Yeah, there's context.
Then
You're going to hate it.
Oh, okay.
It's to do with football.
Oh, I hate football.
I know you hate football. So at the time, there was a player for England called Peter Crouch.
Yeah.
And when he scored a goal, he would do the robot dance. And so it was like big in vogue at the time. And so it's a football player's celebration dance, and that's why they do it. And I've just ruined it for you, haven't I?
You have a bit. But surely the robot dance was around before this Crouch fellow.
Yes, but he made it of the time, in vogue.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, Smithy's really excited about the quiz night because it means free drinks for him as the quizmaster.
He's got the questions in his head and there will be no problem there. All shall be well.
Mick already looks concerned.
Mick already looks concerned is pretty much the description of Mick throughout this entire show.
Yes, yeah, that's fair.
If it's not Smithy, or it's Pam.
Yeah, and we cut to a very bad pub quiz.
Smithy is basically making almost all questions have the same answer, that of Gary Lineker.
Oh, God.
Do you know who Gary Lineker
Something
is?
to do with football.
He is. He was a footballer.
And crisps.
Yes, he was from Leicester, and Walker's Crisps are from Leicester.
Right, all I remember is the adverts on the telly.
Yes, he was very famous, and yeah, so there you go.
Yeah, brilliant, more football. And then we meet Pete and Dawn.
The Sutcliffes.
Yeah, and you talked about their surname in the last episode.
Yeah, so we've got the trio of mass murderer surnames.
And they are constantly arguing.
Yeah.
Their language is really harsh.
I know, they've obviously dialed it up, because, like, there are, like, it's that trope of a couple who are always at at each other, but they've dialed it to the max. You know, like they talking about something else, they turn to each other and Dawn says, "Oh, shut up, you horrible piece of shit." It's like so bleak.
Yeah, it's quite very venomous, actually, her language to him. He's less so, I think.
Yeah, he always looks a bit like, what?
Yeah.
I think you're meant to feel a bit sorry for him, but he is also not great.
Yeah, fair point. That's true.
Again, we got another classic bit of Britishness.
Right.
When Pam's like, not in front of Stacey.
Yeah.
Like that whole thing of like, don't show our dysfunction in front of the guests. Anything put on a front, hide all of the problems.
Yeah.
It's just so British.
Yes, and that continues, actually. Even when they're leaving at the end of this sort of set of scenes, they are arguing as they walk away.
Yes. And what we get in the pub quiz are a few quite interesting questions from Smithy. There's like, who invented the plug?
Yeah.
Do you know who invented the plug?
No.
It was a British man called Thomas Taylor Smith in 1882.
I don't think Smithy would have known that.
Well, someone must have known. He must have known the answer, otherwise how would they mark the quiz?
Yeah, well, as he's doing this quiz, he's getting drunker and drunker and drunker, and we just get sort of cutaways and they come back and he's got even more empty glasses next to him. And then to the point where he gets to question 30 and he doesn't remember the question, he only remembers the answer.
Chris Akabusi.
Is that some sort of footballer?
No, I think he was a sports type of person.
Right, sports, okay.
Yeah, sports. There was also a question where he started off where it was led to make it sort of like it made you think that there was another punchline of it being a Gary Lineker thing, because it was like, what famous person was born in Leicester who was a mass murderer? And the idea is that it was leading up to make you think it was going to be Gary Lineker, but the punchline is it was a murderer.
Yeah.
And it turns out there was actually a mass murderer from Leicester. He's called Colin Pitchfork.
You've been on Google, haven't you?
No, I just know these things.
You have been on Google, though.
No.
You actually know
Yeah,
that?
I knew that.
Okay.
I'm into my true crime, baby.
Slightly concerning.
Also, who can forget someone called Colin Pitchfork?
Well, there is that. What a name.
I had to get that in. But yeah. So it all ends and then they're coming out and...
I was going to say that it was a 29 question quiz because Smithy couldn't remember the last one.
He could remember the answer.
Yeah.
So technically everyone got that one right.
Yeah. And there is a nice moment actually where we see Gavin and Stacey enjoying each other's company at the bar, and it's that connection again to the romance.
And then we cut immediately to Pete and Dawn. That's where she turns to him and calls him a piece of shit, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because he says, stop gawking at them.
Oh, yeah.
And she goes, well, sorry if I don't remember what romance looks like, you piece of shit.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We've said shit a lot on this one.
You have?
I've quoted it, it's fine. But yeah, then they leave, and Pete and Dawn storm off arguing, who would have thought?
Yeah, and then Smithy comes on to Pam, and I am surprised that Mick was okay with this.
I get the impression that Mick is very used to it.
Yeah, well, Smithy is so drunk, and he tries to get in his car, and fair play to Gavin. Gavin stops him.
Yes, he is the drunkest anyone has ever been, even more drunk than you at school with that stout.
That didn't actually happen.
Very important to put that in.
So...
They all go back to the Shipman house.
Yes, yeah, and Gavin puts Smithy to sleep on the couch.
Not in the bath, disappointingly.
That'll come later.
Yeah.
And then Stacey confides in Gavin. They're in bed at this point, and she confides that she's never been further than Bridgend before. And I think that's a really nice, another vulnerable moment.
And also, like, set dressing wise, we don't often talk about the set dressing, but the duvet set they've got, it's really well done, because it's like, it's not grown up bedding, it's very much a child living at home bedding. You wouldn't, because it's like blue and it just feels boy living at home with his parents.
It's blue checks, isn't it?
Yeah, there's just, and it's a bit too big for the bed, and it just, the whole bedroom is set up, and it just screams to me, I'm living at home with my parents.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about Stacey's bedroom decor either when we've seen her on the phone to him and so on. But hers is the opposite. It's pink and fluffy and sparkly.
Teenage girl.
Very girl. Yeah.
Stereotypes, God love them.
Yeah.
And again, almost a nice thing. Pam pops her head in.
She does a little knock, doesn't she?
Oh yes, knock first, pops her head in and sort of says, mix out for the count, and I'm going to put earplugs in so you can let yourselves go.
Yeah.
You know, which is quite sweet and considerate in a slightly awkward parenting way.
Yeah, I was going to say it's awkward again, isn't it?
Yes, I also put a like that you've put on the notes, -sex.
Well,
in case I didn't get it. Thanks for that. I'm glad that you made it very clear.
Yeah, I don't...
That was quite a Bryn or a Gwen thing, really.
What, to just be so blunt?
Just at the end, like, not let it go, like, yeah, you know, let themselves go. You know, sex. And another cut.
Another cut to next morning. Gavin takes Stacey to the train station. So this is her going back home to Barry, and he apologises for not being able to drive her, but he's got to go to work.
Now, I noticed on the way in, I was crowd watching.
Right.
There's two blokes right at the back, puffing on a cigarette, pointing towards the camera. So I think they're two punters from the public that have noticed the camera, and they're just pointing over at it, like having a chat.
Really?
Yeah, it's quite fascinating. If you get a chance to watch it back, look out for the two fellas.
I'm going to have to watch it again now.
Yeah, I just noticed it, and once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it.
Well, Stacey is really understanding, actually, of getting the train back by herself, which is something we haven't seen from her thus far.
Yeah, understanding and level-headedness is not a Stacey move.
Yeah, but security won't let Gavin pass the barrier without a ticket.
This is easily the most accurate representation of a train staff member that I've ever seen. I have encountered people like this man before.
Yeah, and so he gives her a bag and they go to a barrier that isn't in use to have a little kiss to say goodbye.
Yeah, because the guy says, you're holding up everyone, and there's no one behind you.
Yeah.
And then he says, that's enough. You can't pass things over the barrier.
Yeah, and Gavin's like, it's just a kiss.
Well, and also, why can't he pass her something over the barrier? Because she could have just carried it in with her.
He literally a moment ago just passed her bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense, but I think that's kind of the point.
It's the job's work,
He's just
an
an officious prick.
Yeah. So then Gavin gets a thought and it cuts away a little bit and then it comes back and he jumps over the barrier and he's got a bag in his hand now, like a little shopping bag in his hand.
Yeah, because he walks away.
Yes.
And then does that classic, oh, I've reconsidered. And
yeah.
And then the train prick shouts, oi!
Yeah.
And Gavin runs up the side of the train.
Yeah, looking for Stacey.
Yeah, kind of, again, classic rom-com type of thing. Knocks on the window and then waits for her at the door.
Yeah.
And starts rambling.
He does ramble about how much he loves her.
It sounded really familiar, like when we got engaged. A bit rambly, a bit nervous. And then he gets down on one knee.
And he's holding a box.
Yeah. I think we all know where this is going. He goes, Stacey, will you? And then lots of laser dots appear on his head and he gets shouted to freeze! And 3 police officers with assault rifles moving towards him. And I also noticed the officious train prick in the background looking on quite smugly.
Yeah.
And they want to know what's in the box.
Yeah, what's in the box?
I can't tell you, really.
What's in the box?
It's a ring, okay?
Just a ring.
And so he explains that he was going to propose to his girlfriend, and he says, will you marry me? She goes, yes! She moves towards him, and they go, no! And she looks for a moment, and she weighs, you can see her weighing up, going, they might shoot Gavin, but I want that ring.
Yeah.
And she obviously decides it is worth the risk of Gavin getting shot so she can get that ring.
Yeah, and she goes, can I just get the ring? And
No.
they yell, no! And she goes, sod it. And she grabs it from him.
And then he gets tackled. By all rights, she should have been tackled too.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
I know, but she puts the ring on and she's going, it fits, it fits. She's so excited.
And Gavin's going, good! Oh!
Yeah,
and
it's on the ground.
And that's how we leave the episode, which is quite the way to end an episode.
It's very dramatic.
Especially big for episode 2.
Yeah.
Like, most shows, I think, would have saved that for the end of season 1.
They would.
And they've gone straight into it, episode 2.
Yeah.
Which, you know, in the context of the show really originating before it even became a thing as being an exploration of 2 people getting married and bringing their families together, I suppose it makes sense that the wedding is, or the engagement and everything is so early.
Well, we've learnt that recently from the documentary that came out on New Year's Eve. Ruth Jones and James Corden wrote an original episode that was just the wedding, and the producers read it, loved it, but thought, let's make it a series, let's do their backstory.
Yeah, this explores. So it was originally meant to be from the wedding onwards.
Yeah.
So I guess that's probably why they got so into it so quick.
Yeah, speeding it up to get to that wedding point.
But yeah, that was season 1, episode 2 of Gavin and Stacey.
Yeah.
What did you feel about it?
I really liked it, and we got to the end very quickly. I remember thinking, oh, it's finished.
Yeah, it did fly by.
Yeah.
In a way that, even though I think I probably enjoyed the last episode 1 more
Right,
than
yeah.
this one flew by quicker because we weren't being introduced to all the characters.
Yeah.
We knew them already.
Yeah.
And so there was a little bit more rapidity of storyline.
And you could almost look forward to seeing the next character on the screen.
Yeah, as soon as you see Bryn appear across the road, you're like, oh, this will be good.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I suppose then what we ought to do is get straight into it. Like, what would you rate this one?
I haven't actually pre-thought about this today. So
Bearing in mind you gave episode 1 8 out of 10.
I did. Oh no, I don't want to contradict myself. I think I'm gonna go for 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why, it just feels like the right number.
7 out of 10.
Yeah.
So, solid. Good.
Yeah, still
but
good.
not quite as good as the last episode.
Yeah, there were moments like, I know, now I'm going to recap and think back and go, yeah, it was really good. But the Pam spiralling about the toast, the Bryn with the map printed out, yeah, it was good. But I just feel like there could have been more. Like, I think the stuff at the pub and the proposal got a bit much for me.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Well, I'm going to give it a solid 4 slices of toast out of 7.
Right. You've gone with the toast thing?
Yeah.
And you're sticking with the 7 thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Forever.
So 4 out of 7.
Yeah. And obviously I gave episode 1 7 out of 7.
You did.
But that was just wall-to-wall grade A premium. This wasn't quite as packed full. Like you said, there was some really good stuff in there.
Yeah.
And I think it's a thoroughly solid episode.
Yeah.
But by Gavin and Stacey standards,
We didn't laugh as much.
no. Because I think all of the jokes had more room to breathe, which is good. I think it's more sustainable.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't that rip-roaring emergence onto the scene. And so, I guess I'm doing similar to what you did last episode, which is giving myself a bit of room to work with going forward, to be fair. But I couldn't give it wasn't as good to me as the last episode. But that's nothing against it. It's still a brilliant episode.
Yes, and it is a comedy show. So I think basing it on how funny it feels to watch is quite a good way to rate it.
And an episode that's relatively light on Bryn, but pretty heavy on Stacey, is going to be less fun for me.
Shifts the balance.
Yeah, in case you haven't worked out, I find Stacey a touch insufferable.
Yeah, we didn't have that much Nessa either.
No.
And she's there for the comedy usually.
And the tangents we did have for her, by her standards, weren't that fun.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of room to progress going forward, but it was a nice solid follow-up, and it was quite a key one.
Yes, yeah. And again, like, I know we've said that the last episode was a setup episode, but this one with the proposal at the end, it feels like we've had to go from meeting to the point of proposal very, very quickly.
Yes, it does move quite quickly.
Yeah, so it almost feels like this was a follow-up setup to the wedding planning, I suppose.
Yeah, so rather than being character introduction, this was almost like story setup.
Yeah.
And story is eminently less fun than character.
Very
in
true.
Gavin and Stacey.
Well, just in most things, isn't it? People
I
are
guess.
interesting.
Well, it's very deep.
I know.
And on that deep note, that's all, folks. Next time on Telly Talk, we'll be recapping Gavin and Stacey Season 1, Episode 3.
It's like they go in order or
They
something.
do. Numbers and stuff.
So don't forget to rate and review the podcast. We really appreciate your time and effort. It means a lot to us. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Toodles!